First and foremost, this research was presented to the world several years ago by a Russian researcher named Lotus, perhaps the closest approximation of his name's correct pronunciation. The original title of the study is "There Are No Forests on Earth." This work, which has been referenced extensively by numerous channels, delves into thought-provoking subjects that challenge our perception of the world around us. The translation process was arduous, as the researcher, being Russian, spoke with a heavy English accent. Even after refining his pronunciation, some of his intended meanings remained elusive, particularly because he often employed a satirical and humorous style. However, we endeavored to render the most accurate translation possible, preserving the essence of his arguments without any omissions or additions, only incorporating clarifications where necessary to elucidate his intent. It is worth noting that while we have certain reservations about aspects of this research, it remains a thought-provoking contribution. Take from it what resonates with your intellect, and always remember, no one is beyond scrutiny, and every idea is subject to acceptance or rejection. Keep this in mind.
There are no forests on Earth. When you read this title aloud, even with the exclamation mark, you and any rational person would likely conclude that I have lost my mind. You may feel compelled to present me with millions of images of forests as proof. Rest assured, this is yet another grand illusion. They want us to believe that what we see are forests, when in reality, we are merely looking at trees that barely reach a height of 30 meters. You may dismiss this as mere sophistry, pointless rambling devoid of meaning. After all, we all know what forests look like. Most of us have even walked through them. I understand that this is a natural reaction, and it is entirely justified. However, by the time you finish reading or watching this research, such a title will no longer seem so absurd. It will fundamentally alter your perception of forests, turning it on its head 180 degrees.
Now let us begin with a well-known optical illusion, an image in which children see 9 dolphins, while adults perceive 2 lovers embracing. Quite the contrast, isn't it? Try to spot the dolphins and notice how challenging it is. The feminine contours refuse to transform into dolphins for most adults. This is particularly amusing because, for children, the effect is precisely the opposite. Imagine one single image, yet we see it in completely different ways. Even more intriguing is the fact that children and adults cannot swap perspectives or see the image through each other's eyes. Why?
The answer is simple. The eyes perceive reality in the way the Matrix has programmed them to do, but this is not how we should truly see the world. With time, our eyes betray us. From early childhood, we have been conditioned into blindness, to the point that the real world is nothing like what we perceive. We see everything through the lens of habit and experience, a lens that has distorted our entire perception. We have grown so accustomed to this distortion that by the age of 30, this perspective serves to protect our minds. But by 40, without it, we would descend into madness. Do you think I am exaggerating? Very well, take a look at this image.
This formation is called mesa. It was created by the solidification of volcanic lava around 200 million years ago, during the Earth's early formation. You might think I have lost my mind. Perhaps, in time, you will lose yours as well. You will understand my point when we revisit this patch of grass later. But for now, just remember how we stumbled upon this ancient stump. At times, people attempt to capture photographs of themselves embracing tree trunks too massive to encircle with their arms. But consider this seriously. These ancient trees are rare and meticulously documented, preserved within reserves as natural relics. Yet, a heated discussion has emerged online about the forests, with one pressing question echoing across the globe. Why are no forests on Earth, even in Siberia, older than 200 years? Where are the colossal trees?
While many express outrage over this mystery, I prefer to approach the issue from another perspective, by examining the Earth's poles. Curiously, even Soviet biologists found anomalies in the polar regions. They discovered an unnatural volume of water trapped in the form of ice and snow, as well as an unusually high concentration of carbon dioxide in the world's oceans. These abnormal concentrations tell the story of a cataclysmic fire that once engulfed the planet. Through simple mathematical calculations, these scientists concluded that this global inferno wiped out 99% of all living organisms on Earth. Of course, we all know that living cells are composed primarily of hydrogen and carbon. Thus, the ice covering the poles is largely composed of water that originated from the combustion of life itself in the distant past. Consider this number, 99%. This means that every living thing that now grows, crawls, flies, swims, and runs across the Earth is 20,000 times smaller in size than it was before this catastrophe. 20,000 times.
To grasp the enormity of this figure, take a look at this image. This tiny piece of bread represents all human, plant, and animal life, a pitiful crumb perched atop a massive truck symbolizing the full extent of Earth's former biosphere. I hope you now understand that the so-called overpopulation crisis of our modern era is nothing more than a 100% fabrication, a grand deception. Biologists attempted to distribute this number evenly across all continents, but their calculations failed. There simply is not enough landmass to accommodate a biosphere 20,000 times larger than what we see today. What they failed to account for was the ice and snow. Yet the truth remains unchanged. This sheer volume of life must have existed on Earth. Given these considerations, it becomes imperative to reassess scientists' estimations regarding the Earth's capacity to sustain such vast numbers of living beings. The ecological balance governing our Earth is dictated by intricate factors, and the adaptability of ecosystems to relentless and unpredictable changes. Forests standing merely 30 meters tall act like a virus infecting our perception, especially the minds of biologists, blinding us to the real solution. The plant coverage of our planet should be vastly greater than what we currently observe. If vegetation cannot expand horizontally to occupy a convincing expanse, then the only logical answer is that it once stretched vertically. Herein may lie the key to solving this enigma. So, this groundbreaking theory envisions forests of an unimaginable scale.
And now the real intrigue begins. We have unearthed these old photographs, visual evidence of the systematic annihilation of California's sequoia trees between the years 1880 and 1920. These majestic giants miraculously survived the cataclysmic explosions of 1816. Imagine the centuries of growth required for these trees to reach such colossal proportions, only for men wielding axes and saws to arrive. One by one they fell, and soon not a single tree remained. Yet, from the size of these severed trunks, we can deduce an equation to estimate their original height. The diameter of each stump is 3 times the length of the saw that felled it. This means these trees were 3 times taller than the largest ones we see today.
Imagine standing in a forest where the trees do not soar to a mere 30 meters, as they do now, but to a staggering 100 meters. A fantastical woodland, straight out of fairy tales, forests that once stood, now erased by the barbaric hands of those who destroyed them. I understand that these were merely laborers, working to feed their families, following orders from an unseen authority. But if every lumberjack had refused to carry out these criminal acts, we would still have these forests today. For their masters, the true orchestrators, were far too arrogant to wield an axe themselves. And so, to those who seek to defend these cheerful executioners, I offer only one suggestion. Look upon this image closely. They appear as a vile, parasitic force, an infectious blight eradicating the very fabric of our forests. Look at them closely, how they hack into the tree trunks with their axes, oblivious to the fact that they are extinguishing the final breaths of these ancient forests. They are not merely lumberjacks, but instruments in the hands of forces that care only for destruction, like soldiers in an unseen army whose mission is to uproot life itself. And for those who naively believe that these trees were merely cut down for their timber, allow me to correct this illusion. Trees are far more than just a source of wood. They are natural power generators, producing perpetual energy, oxygen through photosynthesis, and even sustenance.
But more importantly, trees possess an intricate network of roots, a sophisticated system designed for data exchange and communication. Our ancestors believed that trees functioned as living archives, encoding knowledge within the carbon fibers of their being, a vast repository of information preserved within their towering forms. Yet one mystery remains. Why did these desecrators spare certain sequoias? Why did they enclose them within fences and call them nature reserves? Of course, the guides at these reserves will weave enchanting tales about the surviving trees, but they will never tell you how their ancestors, those reckless fools of a bygone era, raised an entire canopy of sequoia forests. So let us distill the truth. The remnants of ancient, colossal trees have been uncovered. The displaced ice of the poles has settled into a new mosaic upon the Earth's surface. Everything seems to align, yet the mystery remains unresolved. For in this world, truth is never so simple.
As we delve into the myths of various civilizations, we find countless tales of humans, animals, and plants turning into stone. This is hardly surprising. Paleontologists across the world have unearthed petrified fossils of humans, animals, and plants. So many ancient museums are overflowing with fossilized frogs, clover leaves, lizards, fragments of dinosaurs, and more. Frogs and clover leaves are fascinating. But what about forests? Where are the trees? The ancient sequoia trees of California do not count, for they are composed of carbon, evidence that they do not belong to the Silicon Age. How do we know this? Because they were felled using ordinary tools. Had they been composed of silicon, no axe or saw could have withstood the task. All would have shattered against their trunks. So where then are the silica trees, if these carbon-based behemoths do not belong to that bygone era?
Imagine that we had found them. Can you guess where? In North America itself, more precisely in the state of Arizona, a land where the echoes of ancient events still whisper through the wind. And there lies the colossal quarry now known as the Grand Canyon, a place ironically labeled as a national park. Yet, as one keen observer, known by the pseudonym Wake Up Human, once remarked, to call the remnants of an ancient quarry a national park is the height of absurdity. It is not a park but the waste of a forgotten excavation. This was once the grand city of the Aryans, a civilization that thrived 50,000 years ago, now reduced to nothing but a swirling chasm where the ignorant camp in blissful oblivion. At least that is what Wikipedia would have us believe. And now let me introduce you to the relics of those lost forests.
Welcome to the Open Air Museum, where the petrified trees lie scattered across the desert. Enclosed by a fence, this spectacle is open to visitors, dubbed Petrified Forest National Park. A bizarre name for a phenomenon far beyond conventional understanding. Within this so-called park, the fossils are not merely common, they are astonishingly unique. Whereas turtles and frogs have turned into pale gray stone, these trees have undergone an extraordinary transformation. They have turned into precious gems. Magnificent, aren't they? So, it is time for a reassessment. All our present-day forests are young, the trees barely reaching 30 meters in height. Yet we have uncovered traces of the fabled forests of the gin in the sequoia groves of California. And while biologists may try to replace them with ice columns and snow dunes, we have found petrified fossils from the Silicon Age, trees turned to jewels. Now, everything aligns. Everything fits into place. Or does it? In a perfect world, everything would be orderly and logical. But in our damned infernal reality, nothing makes sense. Nothing is ever as it seems.
When I was a child, watching a documentary about fossilized remains on television, a question tormented me. How can a frog turn into stone instead of decomposing like any other organic being? Let us see what Wikipedia has to say. For a tree trunk to become petrified wood, certain rare conditions must be met. Most importantly, it must be buried in an oxygen-free environment, preserving its organic structure and general appearance. I assume this is an example of dry British humor, but if not, then allow me to explain.
Scientists claim that for a living creature to turn into stone, a sudden catastrophe must occur. For instance, a volcanic eruption, a tsunami, or a mudslide that rapidly buries the frog, preventing bacteria from breaking down the body. To put it simply, for a living organism to become stone, it must be buried, submerged, and subjected to immense pressure. And according to those we call scientists, the organic tissues, once living, then undergo a transformation, as if by magic, into silicon. Remember this equation. And if you have recently buried your beloved pet, I suggest you hurry. Dig it up now, for it has surely turned to stone. You may place its statue on your desk. Would you like to reprimand me for such dark humor? Direct your outrage instead at the official scientific community, those who shamelessly sell us this nonsense. Because in truth, a dead organic body has only two fates. It either dries out like an insect trapped in amber, or it simply decomposes. But organic bodies do not turn into rubble. Never, ever.
This fallacy was created to conceal the truth. And while the magical transformation of organic flesh into stone is already absurd enough, the notion that wood could turn into precious gemstones. Now we enter a realm where deception spirals out of control. Tell me how can a mere piece of wood metamorphose into a gemstone? You may not have an answer, but I do, and we shall discuss that soon. For now, let us examine what these gemstones reveal to us. According to the official narrative, these trees lost an unequal battle against a nearby volcano. And take note, this supposedly occurred 225 million years ago. But wait, there is even more intrigue.
This was not merely a fire or the natural decomposition of organic matter in moist soil. Rather, it was an event that defied the fundamental laws of physics, chemistry, and biology, transforming these trees, as if by some arcane alchemy, into exquisite gemstones of immense value. I can almost picture the legendary magician David Copperfield anxiously smoking in the background, baffled by this unfathomable metamorphosis. Yet, hold on. These trees were not merely shattered or left to decay. They were meticulously sawn into nearly identical pieces. Now, I must ask, which manufacturer produced the saw that the so-called native inhabitants used for this task? Of course, I jest. But it is impossible to ignore the glaring truth. This is no mere museum. It is a stage spectacle. Someone, at some point in time, felled these trees and transported them here. Only a fool would believe that what could magically transmute into gemstones and rare minerals.
Here's another question to ponder. What purpose did this elaborate charade serve? with all these scattered fragments of silicon-based life. And have you noticed how small these trees are? They do not even compare to the sequoias of California. But that is a trivial matter. These are not trees, these are branches. Branches of colossal silicon trees. These titanic trees were so massive that, by comparison, an American sequoia would seem as insignificant as a slender twig next to a mighty baobab. And while tourists marvel at these dazzling mineralized relics, their attention is carefully diverted from the grander truth hidden in plain sight.
To truly grasp the enormity of this mystery, let us return to that unassuming patch of grass we discussed earlier. And now allow me to ask you once again, what do you see? A tree stump standing amidst a bed of daisies? No, this is a mesa. According to official narratives, it was formed by a volcanic eruption during the Earth's primordial epochs, some 200 million years ago. You do not believe me, do you? Very well. And now, do you believe me?